káàrọ.
Afternoon.
Yeah. So today we're doing the sequel of the previous podcast, and we are going to cover the topic of cultural reform and probability and the mathematical field as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward for exploring these topics because it's like subject matters that for me are very relevant for the advancement and progress for our people. And I really know that apparently we can explore some nice gems in these topics.
Okay. So we'll start with cultural reform.
Yeah.
I mean, every field undergoes reform. It's part of progress. You have what's the basis of reform? You have an idea, and then or a theory, and then you realize that it's no longer working. So then it needs to be fixed. So or maybe there are evidences are suggesting that things needs to change. So if you choose to remain the same, it's just going to you'll lose relevance, and you will not even make the needed progress you want to make. So for me, it's reform is part of woman's progress. You have to constantly make reform, and even as an individual, you have to look at how far you have gone and say, am I still getting the result that I expect? And if I'm not getting the result I expect, I'm going to start thinking about what do I need to change, what do I need to drop. So reform is very, very important in woman's existence. And I was saying something that religion helps inform us what culture should be like. In other words, you have practices, and then you have religion. Religion might be like, it's why people, Asian culture, what they normally do is that after they've undergone maybe a study, they would then say God said, and now by saying God said, they've given legitimacy to that particular acts and practices you want to promote in the society, and that becomes a way of life for the people and tradition. So people, there's this thing I've always, the way I normally see things is like there are mountain climbers and there are average people. And average people are people who just want to take in, not really explore or push the frontier.
Like the mundane life.
Just want to live the mundane life. So the goal of the mountain climbers in maybe ancient times, all cultures somehow have mountain climbers, people who normally who are known to always be at the mountain top, for spiritual practices, for to tune up, to
elevate
their frequency, and so that they can be a tool to receive a divine mandate or information. So you find that in many cultures like that, and these people, when they get their information, they give people tradition, which is the average people who are just interested in in what has been, what we call it can use. So my point is that, and the farther you go away from the mountaintop, the more you have people, So it's always like a pyramid. The more you go, the tinier it is becoming. Then as you are getting farther away from the mountain, the top, it becomes the people that are interested in that topics become not interested, like the people who have the finest detail of what that information is all about. You get, it's like you have taught C B minus 4 minus 2 is equals to 2.
Yeah.
So then somebody will go further, maybe by the time they do analysis in university and say, why is 4 minus 2? Then they will begin to prove, at that point, the depth of the understanding of that particular thing you just took as given is much more deeper than you. So, what I'm saying is that you always have mountain climbers, and then the closer you are to the source of that information, the pyramid becomes tinier, and then the farther you are, the more people you have. So basically,
the bigger the circle.
And
the closer the circle, the more accurate and refined the information is.
It is, yeah. So my point is that it happens in this in the temple of learning, every temple of learning, which you can call it university too. It happens, it's a temple, and it also happens in the religion.
Esoteric and exoteric.
Yeah.
Esoteric meaning the closed circle, and exoteric meaning the general public.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that in many spheres. So reform must continue. Every society that is given to progress must definitely be given to making reforms, adapting, whatever their preconceived ideas, must continuously adapt it to ensure that progress is possible.
That's true. I mean, from what you said, I think of many things. The first thing I want to highlight is the mountain climber analogy. What comes to mind is this: do you, in your opinion, swimming against current is a way to bring back progressive reform to a particular society, where in a society where everybody's swimming in a current, the progressive way is to swim against current? Is it the principle?
I like that.
Yeah.
I think from the way I look at things, I would say no. I think life in itself is for syncretizers, those who can syncretize ideas.
What is a syncretizer?
Those who can bring in many perspectives and form something new.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily you going against the people like that. You can be disruptive, and but your destructive heart is because you know how to bring from different sources. So by the time you bring out something new, it's almost like you are destructive. Meanwhile, you have built it from several traditions. You get? So it's not like you going against you, like this guy would say, the guy that wrote Mastery.
Robert Greene.
Yeah. And he said you have to be given to the task of the previous generation. Try to, to devote time to studying it. Then it's by you devoting yourself to it, enormously that you can then begin to see what their flaws, what they didn't, and you move beyond the realm of seeing it as a science. You then begin to see it as a healthy. You just see it as a creative endeavor rather than a science. Because people will see something like everything as a science, we see it as this is how we're doing it. So we must continue to do it that way. But because you have serious depth of the issue, you would then begin to see it from a creative perspective. That I will put B, I will put C, and let's see what comes out. So if to you it's just going to become a creative endeavor rather than a science. But you first have to start with the science. Taking it as a science, like a truth. Then as time goes on, you then begin to take it as art. So as an artistic endeavor. So that is how I see it. If you're swimming against the current, it's not. I don't see how that will work. I don't see how that will work. I just see it as somebody. I don't see how that will work because now people might. It depends on the issue now. People might deviate from what they should. In fact, the whole society might deviate from something.
Of course, from an initial plan.
Initial plan of maybe the founding fathers, and then have a new norm. If you choose to now stick to the paths of the founding fathers, are you swimming against the society in that sense? So it's more like you just have a contrarian perspective, a contradictory perspective, whereby there is an established norm and you think this is the way it should be done. It's not like you are just different from, you're different. What you are doing is different from what they are doing. But I'm trying to look at, integrate it into what you just said about swimming against the tide, because what if I'm not looking at this in an academic setting. You must have even been here good enough or observed closely to be able to say this thing is not. There are some flaws in it. You must have been here enough to say this thing is not good enough. There are some things that will not make it a good something that one must do. You must. Otherwise, the only reason why you will resist the peer pressure is because you have a good understanding of this part. That's why you would be able to say, I'm not joining you in doing this maybe your technique or whatsoever, because you have seen that you have a sufficient understanding that if I still go this way, this will produce more results than this, because you have seen enough of this to be able to say this is not what it should be. So yeah, that's it. So even people who in that perspective of a contrarian that you are talking about, yes, there's nothing more often when you know things better, you become a contrarian, because now you can begin to spot fact and fallacies. You can begin to separate fact and fallacies, and then by so doing, you are definitely going to be going against the norm, paradigm that exists, of the paradigm of your day, and then try to channel something new. That is how I see it. So it's not like people initially set out to go against the paradigm that they find. I don't see that as a step, that a procedure that can work. It's when people are knowledgeable enough, and then they can say that maybe this thing is not, there are some flaws, there are some arguments that are not making sense, you know. So something like that. Yeah. It's more like you being born into a Christian household. And people are saying that, oh, how you now, the way you are born in the household, but before you can well, I've noticed that people who are born are inquisitive, are curious, who even know Christianity really well, are the ones who normally somehow still have not that they will totally push it aside, but they will understand it well enough to know that that they can say that they can have a different opinion, from the general public. It's because perhaps they've read the documents well enough and they've seen that the popular opinion that people hold is just what our pastor said, our imam said this, our this person said this, and they've read it well enough to be able to say, no, it's not as it can't not be related to in such a manner, Yeah, they would then form their own form their own religion. Yes, it might have a basis in Christianity, but they will be solo in how they see that religion, they will be in that alone journey. So that comes to the contrarian perspective.
It's still a reform, but it's a reform that has no intellectual foundation, or it doesn't have no substantial foundation. Because to go back to what you were saying about the pyramid, right? The higher you go, the tinier the pyramid is, and the more precise the information is. That's how I understand what you're saying. And this has a but if you, and that example that you used, you're just creating a new religion out of
religion.
Out of a general understanding, without really researching, without really climb the mountain in a metaphorical way, then you're creating a movement, a reform that doesn't have. It's like a deck of cards. It's fragile. It doesn't have no strong substance. And for me, for a reform to work, it has to have a strong substance, a strong backbone. That's how a reform can survive.
Yeah. Well, in the like I said, reform. It's the way I said it is that. It is people who tradition is given to people by mountain climbers, and it's easy for generations to come back and say this is how we're doing it, and they would be static. They will make no progress. It's then up to the mountain climber in the coming generation to say we can make this reform, And the mountain climbers make those reforms because they have good knowledge of. They become studios of the previous mountain climbers. They know. They've seen the facts and the fallacies, and they can. The fact that those previous people, the knowledge might be useful tomorrow, yesterday. I might not be true today and tomorrow, So it is not that the mind, those of the past who were mountain climbers, doesn't have to be wrong. We must not put it put them so much on a pedestal that they can't get it wrong. But the fact is that knowledge useful yesterday may be useless today and tomorrow. So it is now up to those who are open to reform and mountain climbers to then have dug enough and then have the confidence, because it takes you having studied well enough and then having the confidence to effect the changes that you want to see. So my point is that, and I was using the issue of Christianity. If you were to be born in a society whereby everyone just wants you to be identified as something, even though it's to, if you have not studied enough about that tradition and you have not seen its fallacies and its facts, you cannot really have a strong conviction on how you want to chart your own path. So that's what I'm saying. So to make reforms, you must be people who have also dug well, and they must all be, and because they've dug well, they begin to see it not as a science, they begin to see it as an artistic endeavor, and because it is an artistic endeavor, it's open to. It's not a regimented truth,
It's not rigid. It's not static.
Yeah. So
I see. So seeing it as a science is what prevent it to progress, like adaptivity, and seeing it as an art, from your perspective, is what keeps it evolving.
Yeah, it what keeps it evolving. Yeah, but it needs to get into the science. There are so many things about the procedural information that are going to be useful, but at a time, especially when you're pushing the next frontier or we are trying to make the needed reform, it's because you have now studied well enough to be able to push the frontier. So that's what I'm saying. And at that point, it is a creative endeavor. It's not the science. It is not the procedural information that got you up to where you are that is going to push to the next frontier. It is the creativity that will push to the next frontier. So, and that's where reforms happen.
A creative endeavor, that seems very appealing for sure.
Definitely. So, cultural reform now. Now we just really talked about reform generally as a endeavor that happens in not just in every field, and every field of humanity is a culture. It's a practice. So now, in the sense of cultural reform, we can talk about social reforms, we can talk about economic reforms, technological reforms, and even paradigm of epistemological reforms. There are many ways of looking at reforms.
Yeah, there's many branches too. Many branches from the culture.
Yeah, these branches of the culture, and these branches has to do with every field of human endeavor. So, a culture. First of all, a culture has to change with time. Has to adapt. Because that is how it's going to remain. If it doesn't adapt, it's just going to perish. And if you let's say you've got to, okay, let's say you have a practice, and let's say socially now you have a practice in your community. If it's not appealing, if times are changing and your coming generation are changing, and you have not find a way of making that social practice in tune with the language of the time, you might find that you are not going to really make sense to the coming generation, and and that might just make you fallout. So, in fact, it is even wiser to anticipate the changes and then to reposition or repurpose your literature for the changes. That's how you keep it evolving and adaptable, you know. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a library. It's not going to be a book. It's because if you are continuously progressive people, you will continuously evolve your literature, you know, and use different languages to express different things, you know, just to make sure that it is in tune with modernity and makes it appealing to the coming generation. So, so it is very important. Let's say you have a practice, you can reinterpret it to the modern setting, you know, so such that it becomes useful,
like relevant.
But if you want to say the way it was done by our forefathers is how you want to do it.
I mean, why you say like that, it makes me think of tales, you know, tales and the African settings. Like we have a lot of tales that where the main characters are animals and they go through some adventures, and at the end of that adventure there's a morale. And that morale, you can extract it and use it as wisdom to, you know, for guidance in your life.
Definitely.
How to, you know, behave in some settings, like mind your behavior when you are in company. Mind your tongue when you're feeling some anger. And, you know, our tales, like many West African tales, whether it's from Fulanis, from Bambara, I've read a lot. Like as a kid, it's entertaining because you see animals talking, crocodile speaking, but it has a very deep morale and lesson that you can take and use it into your day-to-day life, whether you are going to the office and you're dealing with co-workers that are gossiping behind your back, or, you know, saying all kind of nasty thing behind your back. Tales like these help you to navigate these currents and tides.
And even the story, even when it comes to immigration and how you must behave in a foreign land too, there are folklores, there are stories, you know, like I'm sure I don't know if I've heard it, but I'm sure if it's in the Yoruba setting, it would be a story like, oh, well, we casted the Ifa for the so person, the son of so. That once it goes to this place, it's still going to be a Yoruba town, but of course the way they see themselves back then is different from how we see ourselves today. Because a town, they are very tribalistic there.
Okay.
Because not that they know they are related, but if you are getting into Hawa, or let's say my hometown, and you are from, they will be like, where are you from? Now you cannot ask that anymore, because we have a standardized language, you know, and we have a standardized standardized language means the names have been standardized, so it's uniform, you know. But in the past, whereby everybody have the languages are inflected one way or the other, it's either this one, they are the same language pool, but dialect different. So, and also they have different means of identification.
Tribal markings.
Exactly. So the man from this town knows I'm a stranger in that next town. Like
the one from Abeokuta, for example.
Exactly. He's a stranger in the next town. Today it might be awkward. Today it might now be the whole group now are those that are one language community against another distinct language community. So because now through warfare and threat of order, they've been able to accept their their sameness. So like as you can see now, warfare and this and threats from outside as what has created now a new form of love and bond and unity. But in the past they didn't know that the same way whites, the Europeans brought about a new form of identity for Africans, because there was an external threat. Not that Europeans themselves sees themselves as one, because there wouldn't have been several wars over the millennia.
There was always differences between them.
Exactly.
Like the Italians, the Germans, even amongst the Germans themselves, the Germanic tribes.
Exactly.
Always fighting against each other.
It's always
the Irish.
And it happens even in the household. That's where you know it's very, which is if I want to understand the issue of government, I like to relate it to the household. Now, even in the household, there's need for hierarchy, and your brother wants to be the elder, this wants to be the Now the question is, at the point you might want to challenge that hierarchy and say, why should you be the elder? So and it is this hierarchy is built into nature. Nature wants to find hierarchy as quickly as possible, and it's then create a tussle about who is going to be in the higher and lower hierarchy. You get what I'm saying? So that is it. In Nigeria today, I saw something. Hausa as a language. So the governor said, "Oh, it should become a language in the north." And some people were like, "Oh, this, oh, that." Some people felt threatened. But my point is that it's if you look at it, if you take that if you personify the language as a person, that language, and you personify other people's language, you will see that there's one person now, it's in the personal form, and wanting to dominate another person, suppress another person. So it is up to that one to say no. My point is that because there is always need for hierarchy, one might want to go into extinction, and there's always saying, I will resist your domination, and that creates conflict. And there's this Oyo being the Oyo Empire and the Egba Kingdom. Egba is the currently Abeokuta and the environs. So that group is, those are the people called Egba. And of course, they were paying tributes to Oyo, and Oyo was very abusive, even though they knew that they have the same ancestral linkage. So it's just to tell you that economically, socially, politically, and linguistically, each one civilization is striving to override another civilization, and it is for all these differences of who is at the top of the hierarchy that leads to conflict. So I think I've strayed too far from what we're talking about.
But conflict doesn't need to be necessarily a bad thing.
It's definitely brings progress sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a great man used to say, like, he actually encouraged conflicts of ideas because that's where truth emerges.
That's true.
So you need a conflict to find a way, a pathway that wasn't obvious in the first place.
Yeah, and then it's also where another place where it's syncretism occurs, because if I there's this story, two ethnicities, whenever they had settled in a particular territory, over time they will the ones, maybe the indigene and the settlers will be like, okay, I want to impose the settler, the indigene will be like, no, you have to take my culture, and and this one will be like, no, I'm not taking your culture, I have my own culture, and there's going to be conflict, and until they it's either one win, but if none wins, they will go to war, and they will resolve it through war. Whoever wins the war is going to be the ones whose way of life is going to dominate space, because at the end of the day, it's this everything man does is going on over space, territory. Your language is over territory, your way of life is over territory, so you have to always relate space to whatever social phenomenon that are going on. So now if they do not abstract a new form of identity, if the war doesn't go away, and if they do not abstract a new form of identity, I would say, okay, put it in a better way, they have to, if they don't, war will do justice in the sense that one person must get out of the way. But let's say none of them is going out of the way, then they must abstract a new form of identity. And of course, we all know spirituality is a way in which identity is defined often. So they would have to then match their deities together and give it a new maybe a new name, and from there they have a new set of rules, So my point is that because they have A, they have B, now they can begin to form C. They begin to syncretize, So that is balance, that is harmony, and somehow fairness, Yeah, but up to it's nobody wants to agree, nobody wants to back down. Especially the indigenous feels they don't have heard. Why should they back down? So there's always this economic, political, social warfare, psychologically at this front of warfare. So it's bound to happen. It's human history.
human nature, would even say.
Nature, yeah.
It's human nature.
So.
And it reminds me of this quote that I think it's from Einstein, where he say, like, great spirit are met with strong violent opposition from mediocre mind. And how I can link it with what you just said is the easier solution is having a conversation from both the indigenous and the settlers, and it's an open arena where if one can convince the other, then one will let themselves get take this culture. But the thing is, there is egos that are also clashing.
Yeah, it's the ego.
And
that's nature.
And the ego is creating sometime bloody conflict that wasn't even necessary in the first place. And my country has been a victim from that more than 30 years ago. There was our founding father, Thomas Sankara, who was a visionary, and he led a 4-year revolution. Like, the revolution was meant to be longer, but he was cut short by an assassination. and his revolution was for social justice and the progress of the collective population. So reform was for one goal and one goal only: the well-being of the collective. Every classes of society benefited of well-being in some sort, but he was betrayed by his best friend, and it was a matter of power. So that's what I mean by ego. How ego can change the trajectory of the destiny of a whole collective.
It's ego, and it's you have to always take it into account if you are in a political setting as well, and you have to you just have to create, you have to adapt, creating a stable structure, a structure that it's not like you are the only one calling the shot, that gives other people a sense of belonging and voice. If people, and you have to also create the need of an external threat, either imaginary or real. So propaganda is going to forever be. In fact, if you want to be a good statesman, you have to understand the power of narrative in shaping your people so that they do what needs to be done. That advances the society, and also to achieve whatever you want to achieve. The power of narrative is key. I would say it's far potent than weapons. And I think what the military guys, even some civilian guys, got wrong is that they didn't really understand their power. To them, power is aggression, violence.
Not at all.
Power is subtle. To the best of my knowledge, it's subtle, and those who know the game will keep it. It has to be that way. So
like the strength of the argument over the argument of strength. That's what determined the long game.
The long game. Exactly. So it's key. So reform, cultural reform, in every social reform. If you could argue that the issue of marriage in Europe is a reform. It's a sexual.
The issue of marriage.
Marriage, gender marriages and all that. It's a reform. So every society must undergo reform. As to what marriage is, what marriage should be, and what marriage shouldn't be. And today it is unconventional for us to marry many wives. So somehow, maybe through conquest, our society has been forced to undergo reform. So it's a social reform. No, it is not. You personally don't even see the practical need for it anymore. But if there were to be a practical need, maybe. But today, in the urban setting, it's not a practical need. In the rural setting, it was a practical need, But now, in a urban setting, it's you're just going to die. You die. You die. One would just die for a crazy man, So
for sure, I kind of agree with you. Right now, like it's more of validation thing, like marriage. It's more of getting approval.
Oh, is it even monogamy itself? Or marriage in monogamy?
I'm talking about marriage and monogamy.
Oh, okay.
And the urban setting.
Oh, yeah. So, it's, people want to, anyway, aside from the pragmatic need is about if it's a social, if it's a pragmatic, if it's a psychological need, fine, maybe biological need, Yeah,
but biological need, you don't need to get married. You don't need to get married.
I mean, do you even need to get married at all? You can still have your psychological needs met.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
having a enriching conversation like this one, or playing, strategy games, card games, reading a good book, exploring interesting subject matters.
Yeah, that's it. At the end of the day, it's to me, a marriage. It's not. I don't. It's not compulsory for everybody. So it's not a social need. Yes, it could be a social need for furthering civilization, because you have to keep the civilization going, and that comes by producing kids and then passing down your civility, so it's a social need. But personally, as an individual, does it serve a need? I think it's a call that should be made by the individual. Now we've identified that it has a social need, which is for civilization to continue and exist. But because it could also, if you marry wrongly, it could be damaging, And if you are lucky, and I think to me, from most literature, spiritual literature I've read on marriage, I think it's more like it's about alignment of personality. It's about your personality align. Does somebody personality aligns with yours? So it's not about the beauty. It's really about that alignment of personality, and also Yoruba placed so much emphasis on Iwa as well. And that Iwa is not a religious person. We're talking about the spiritual, the emotional maturity of the person you're dealing with now. So if the person is not, if you marry and it's the person you're dealing with is not emotionally mature, it's the road to hell.
How do you know that in that situation the person is at the same page as you?
That is to me, this is very difficult, because people change, and people, it's difficult to know people, it's difficult. The people give signals, yes, but is it possible that we might say, oh, you might see those signs and then say, well, there are some other things, and then say, okay, maybe this balances it out, because you cannot find somebody perfect. And so you might be making a good judgment, dependent. It's the outcome that will determine it. So if the outcome goes wrongly, you've been judged. If it goes well, okay, you can say I made a good judgment. So that's probability now. So probability is built into reality somehow. So
emotional maturity
that
also need reforms too.
I mean, I'm thinking of something, to be very honest with you, and my thinking is that while growing up, I suffered from, I didn't really have my type of community in Nigeria, and I wasn't a bad guy. I wasn't all these religious guys. So I didn't really have where to belong, I didn't resonate that what they also wanted to club. It didn't really resonate with me that much. Those who wanted to do religious activities, it didn't really resonate with me that much. But I say maybe if I had a community where we're talking philosophy, metaphysics, maybe that would have resonated with me. But of course, we're not there yet in our society, and which they want everybody to think one way. You have to see that you're this way or that way, So so I think it's one of the things, like you said, everything, even the emotional maturity needs reform. It's that we all need a community, and for me, I wish, like, of course, my first immediate community will be my family when I start having one, and then but it should go beyond that. It should go beyond that, and nothing helps you in doing this better than religion. To be very honest with you, even though I'm not too here, but I still feel religion helps create a good sense of community. Because how do you feel? I mean, when you have a community and you all have a mandate to love your neighbor as yourself, I mean, that's nothing creates a better community than that sentence. That's, for me, that's where social science really begins from.
Loving your neighbor
as yourself, and what we are just doing after that is just to create laws, civic laws, to at the end of the day achieve all these fundamental precepts that create society, a balance in the society, and orderliness in the society. So for me, it is important having that community for my kids. It's very important, because if you were to raise people in Nigeria, raise a child in Nigeria, if you are not here, then you have to be here. People don't really recognize that there are people who are just who are not here. Yeah, they just I go to church to pray. That doesn't mean I go to church for Bible study. I go to church for night vigil. Yeah, let's say to just pray because I believe in prayer. But for us, Bible study, I can maybe if I can pick a CD, I can buy tapes, I can buy books, but I don't feel that going to 2 hours every once in a week will really get me the kind of knowledge that I want, and the questioning that because if I'm probing this direction and you are talking around this direction, I'm going in another way, you are busy discussing. So for me, I fell out of I had no interest in going through all of that, because this is a subject matter that I'm interested in. It could even be that it's a subject matter that will turn the old tradition upside down. I didn't care, So, but as long as I have a range of questions in my head, those are the puzzles that I'm trying to solve, not what somebody wants me to know. And so that really made me a kind of lone wolf. So, but the idea is that having a good community, and it's good for even the children. It's good to it makes them pick spouse easily. It makes them pick spouse easily because you would have been taught the same precepts and principles, and so there will be it's not like I'm speaking here and she's speaking. We don't have to think the same way. That's a taboo, but at least you want a measure of
complementarity.
Yeah, exactly.
Like exchange.
That is balance. Yeah. You know, it's because I had this issue I had something like that. That makes something not to work out with somebody. You know, because we're two different people. Yeah, because so I wouldn't want to talk about that, but it's that emotional maturity. If you have a community where you are, the keyword is emotional maturity and spiritually evolved people, not necessarily religious people, because spiritual people may not be spiritually evolved. And I would say there are very many, you know. So you have people that are spiritually evolved and have the emotional maturity, and with that you really this kind of knowledge embedded right from childhood, it's very good. It's very good, and it allows the people even to pass down their civility to the coming generation, and the generation coming will make the necessary improvements, and it goes on like that, you know. So for me, it's that community is good.
What you say is very interesting and important, because you said, like, to understand politics, you look at the household, and we're basically having a small parenthesis and relationship, and how emotional maturity helps to sustain harmonious relationship, not just between lovers but also between friends. And it got me this small insight where, in order for a community to move forward, it's important to have emotional maturity.
Yeah, that's why, you know, we've said this several times about that the core of every society, of every spirituality, is to create an harmonious society. And if that is the core, then it must be that emotional state is what spirituality, psychological emotional state, is what spirituality is seeking to address. You know, and you can do every form of sorcery in the world. If you are people who are not given to the, like I said, the best form of sorcery, which is that emotional maturity, it will still be a people. Those kind of people will still fail. So it is very important, you know, that you have, and that's where that's where you need religion, you need values that should, the right values to be promoted, and somehow, as much as it is, shaming is bad, it's also, if you're a sociologist, you know that shaming is part of how we regulate society. You know, so it's very important. So yeah. So emotional maturity goes a long way.
And we cannot emphasize and stress that enough.
Yeah. It goes a long way. Yeah. So so reform, going back to cultural reform, it's very important that people must update, and they update by exploring, and also being given to aloneness, you know, having quiet time, devotion into whatever practices they want to, and exploring other cultures, civilization. Then, so take it from others. You are improving within. You are reconciling what you've learned from other people. You are seeing paradoxes, contradiction between yours and theirs, and you are resolving those paradoxes with good, quiet time, and resolving those paradoxes in such a way that are healthy, and you're pushing. By resolving those paradoxes, you're pushing the frontier of your society. So, which is what the issue is, because I was, while growing up, even till now, I still resolve a lot of paradoxes, but the goal of growth, I would say the growth of everything, the growth I've experienced, it's just me seeing that there's a paradox, there are contradictions. I do not just throw it away. I look at how do I find harmony, how do I find balance, and by going for that harmony and balance between all these paradoxes is where insight comes in.
So you find insight through paradox.
Yeah, exactly.
And in order to receive this paradox, you have to be willing to go alone.
To resolve the paradox, you need to be alone. But to you don't have to be alone to find paradoxes.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay, I get the difference.
Yeah,
I get the difference.
You stumble on what I may hear something from you. I'm not here when I heard that from you, and I go to a friend of mine and I heard something from him, and that there's a paradox, and I'm in my head now. I'm like, okay, how do I resolve this paradox? Once I resolve the paradox, it's an insight that on a much deeper level, So it's beautiful to engage in paradoxes.
It is beautiful because your worldview just keep getting larger and larger, and that is the purpose of our brain. Like neuroplasticity, our brain is supposed to learn as much as possible throughout lifetime until our last breath. And there's this quote I read somewhere, like a high level of intellect tend to men on social. I don't know what, but it reminded me of that.
Mankind is a social animal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that we like I said, I didn't find my community. It doesn't mean I'm not interested in.
Of course, if you will have found like-minded people,
exactly.
You will have your social animal will have been activated.
Exactly.
But when you're around people talking about, things that don't really bring value to your life in a long term, like things like just some
that I have no interest in basically.
Yeah.
So it might have value to them, but for me it doesn't have.
For you it's just like you're occupying space without having no purpose.
Yeah, exactly. So so that's it.
Sure. Let's switch on to the subject on probability and mathematics.
Yes, I think in mathematics there are many ways of thinking in mathematics. We just talked about the game theory, and that has to do with players, and there could be players in international politics. I was already speaking of.
Oh good.
In international politics, you can have players, and then it is up to you to know how do I play, and even anything that has to do with relationship, it's a game. But of course, maybe you don't want to take that into marriage. But even in marriages, you could say that there are elements of power play. There's an element of power play. So you don't, the woman will tell you, I want to be an independent woman. That's power. She's looking for power. It's not, she's not, because if she's dependent, she has lost her power. So nations say they want independence, it's power. They want political power back restored because they don't want somebody else determining their by their faith. And you could also argue that people who are dropping Christianity or Islam, or people who resisted those religions, are also power. It's also about power because it simply means other people's culture will not shape my narrative. So it's and they're resistant, not necessarily because they might not even believe in their own, but they're resistant simply because they want to have their autonomy, their power, So game theory, anytime you are having a relationship with people, it's good to it's good to think in terms of power. Yes, you can be even one ethnicity to another within a country. It's power. I've always said, in the Nigeria context, I put it this way. For people who would look at it from game theory, it's like the Nigeria as a state, as a nation state, is it's as a multinational state. Let's put it in that right word. The idea of state is that there is sovereignty, and it means that there is 100% power.
Yep, I agree.
Absolute power, and this power is shared in state formation within the province's formation. So even though you have to be as ethical, you have to be as loving as you can, but you have to also be pragmatic. So as much as, which is why I always feel like people must understand that it is power always exists, and you have to. It's not just about saying love. Let's love one another. Let's hate one another. It shouldn't be about that. If you are truly pragmatic, you would not put yourself in a position where anybody can harm you. It's not because I hate you. It's not because I love you. It's just me putting myself in a position whereby I don't get harmed. Or you can also say risk management. If I'm to say this Mr. Hey, do this for me, but I'm considering the downside that Mr. Hey might not do that for me, but I've thought about another option, and I've put that option as a plan B in place. Practically securing power, making sure that I do not lose my power. You get what I'm saying? So most times when we begin to reduce the subject matter of power to subject matter of love and hate, I run away from such people because it's not going to help anybody, because this thing is about power, it's about economics. There's no point reducing it to a matter of power and love and hate, and it is up to you to make sure that you are not in a position that anybody is going to victimize you. In politics, in geopolitics, on game theory, you do things in such a way that you do not. That's why when you see a country, let's say, I don't have anything against country A. Country B. I am country B, and country A is fighting country C. And I can see that if country A conquer country C, it's going to be very strong, and I might be the next in line. It is up to me to say, we will see to it that you fail. because I don't want you to come and consume me.
So it goes into anticipating.
Yeah, it goes into anticipating. It has nothing to do with eating Mr. Hay. I will support C, just the same way Russia Ukraine, I will support C to make sure that Hay fails, and that means it will not increase its power, because it's like animal consume one animal, it becomes powerful, and it's spreading, it's becoming bigger, it's spreading its tentacle. Then I am just small like this, but he has grown so big, and I can easily be consumed. So my point is that yes, we can have good ideals, we can promote idealism, but we should also balance it with pragmatism, and that's when I've always said middle, balance comes in again. So in everything man does, you have to always go for balance, and that's what the psychology of the trickster, something like that, does. Like every crossroad, you must always go for the middle, not necessarily go for it, but it's good to always do not judge, always look at the opposing sides, idealism, pragmatism. Okay, how do I marry both and find a good balance and harmony?
I see a parallel with the conversation we had before about rationalism and empirism, where rationalism is tied to idealism that every human is born intelligent, and then empirism is saying no, intelligence comes from gathering facts from the world, putting it in a mind and generating new ideas. I see.
So in other words, in the case of empiricism, it's like more like you take in through your sensory, through your senses, or you observe the world through your senses, and then the idea of rationalist is that man generates ideas independently. So it's not like, yes, you can generate, you only generate when you've already have those ideas. So it's more like, it's not totally throwing away rationalism, it's just saying rationalism is built on first when our sensory organs take in from the world, and then it's used what it has taken, so then the rationalism process then takes place from there and then begins to generate. So it's always good to just always balance things out. So that's for game theory. I've just explained to you how it plays out in politics. It is up to you to ensure that you are not in a position of weakness. It's up to you to ensure that your options are always many. Either if I'm buying crude oil from Mr. Hay alone, I'll be scared, because I will start doing everything to be looking for alternative, because I know that if I'm dependent on Mr. Hay alone, it's not good. I want to make them too, such that my economy does not collapse, So, and this man cannot just say, hey, I will turn off the gas today, you do not do what I want, so I will turn off the gas. You don't want to lose your independence to people, and once you lose your independence to people, you have lost your power.
It's basically what you're just saying is basically what Sankara said: he who feeds you controls you.
Yeah. So it's like now in Nigeria today, Dangote is already producing, is already refining produce, and that is a level of independence, now, and it's good for the foreign exchange, and it's also good for the advancement, because now more money is in the economy, and that means
he's refining oil, right?
He's now, many refineries are not working. So for many years our refineries are not working, and even our steel plant. So we hope the steel plant will be the next, and with that, it's you need those two elements, and also the agriculture 3. to be in place to start saying you want to start having many discussion about how you're going to further your civilization and your society. So I'm moving to other subject matters that deals with has more abstraction in them than how to heat, what to heat, and things like that. Energy, power supply. In the modern age, you can't function well without having secured energy.
Oh, 100% sure. Like, when you imagine still to this day in some African countries, like, you still have power shortages of weeks in universities and neighborhoods and hospitals. I don't know if I talked about it in the last one, but a friend of mine, she's from Cameroon. She recently went back home to visit her family. And while she was there, she experienced power shortages for 3 days. And she was very angry. And the thing that also disturbed her is that because she came from Germany, he said that people back home said, "Oh, we're used to it. It's not big deal. It's gonna be okay."
She has a problem with that.
And she has a problem with that. She said, like, how can you say such things like that? This is not normal. But because it has become normal, quote unquote, people are not realizing that they're losing their powers and they're losing the right to live like with dignity. And yeah, it's really like to go back to what you're saying, these paradoxes that are clashing, where you come from a place where the norm, the status quo is a shortage, like 2 power shortages per week. That's normal, and you find your way to live with that. And someone from a place that has no power shortage, like this light can be on for even the rest of the year, and it's okay.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, in this country, people put like TVs with the screen of a burning fire, just because they have the luxury of doing that, right? Just for their own good. And back home, where we have all the resources to sustain our energy, we're still not capable in some countries to have energy circulating for an extended period of time without an abrupt interruption. So
that's the issue. So the issue of game theory is the mathematical thinking that goes into, that talks about whenever there's a relationship, there's a power play. And wherever there's a power play, there must be strategy. So that's what game theory does. And it happens even in the cells. And because it's biology, it makes use of game theory too.
This our cells in our body.
Yeah.
Wow.
So biology makes use of game theory. So, and that's to determine. Yeah, I don't really know how they use it, but I know that they use game theory in biology. In political science, we use it for international politics and warfare. In economics too. How is it being used in economics? Maybe in the game of maybe duopoly or oligopoly.
I guess maybe marketing.
Marketing, yeah. Or market structure, something like that.
Like you make the customer, like you basically manipulate the customer to buy your product.
No, it's in the market structure. Now I remember. A market structure has to do with what's the nature of the market. In the market where there are many players, you don't have power. Let's say Mr. Hay supplies. I get my I am Mr. Hay. I just have one. I'm the only one, and I have 50 people supplying to me. So it tells me that I'm the price. I'm the one that dictates the price. It's not the 50 people, because there are many. I can't. No, this one is not selling. I move to this. This one is not selling. I move to this. And the goal in every market, any businessman, is to make sure that you are the price maker. You know, it's that you being tossed around by the market forces. I know I don't want this. So that's in the case of economics. And then, so let's just stop at the game theory. But we can also look at it interactive. In that aspect, you are looking at how things change in relation to one another. That's a mathematical thinking that has to do with all these calculus. You know, you're trying to understand that if I move here, how is it going to affect, if X, how is it going to affect Y? Is the relationship a kind of inverse one, or is it a positive one? You know, so you're trying to look at.
Inverse one is negative?
Yeah, inverse one is the one whereby it goes up, this one comes down. Then this, the positive one is that they are both joints, is that they are both moving together. You know, so they are moving in the same direction together.
So in this situation, the positive one is more desirable, I guess, for.
No, it doesn't matter. It's just that if you're trying to measure and analyze things, you want to know how they move. Okay, you want to know, like, and you want to quantify it. You know, you want to say, if I pour more water, the alcoholic content in a particular mixture would reduce. You know, so if I pour 1 liter, then I think it reduces. The calculation might show us that it reduces by maybe 1 liter. Maybe it reduces by 0.5 meter. The alcoholic or chemical content in it reduces by 0.5. So if you run like 2-3 tests, you know, and you can then establish a pattern, and then you can then begin to calculate and extrapolate based on that calculation, and say, without you running the experiment all the time, you can then begin to say, based on this particular on this particular pattern that I've observed, I can then begin to say, if I pour 20 liters, I can expect that I will be having a particular reduction up to a particular point in the chemical content of the liquid, you know, of the mixture. So by so doing, I can then be exact, you know, about my how the things work. Water in, more water in, and the chemical content, how they work in relation to each other, and I can then begin to I can study the interaction between those two variables, water and the chemical content, and how it interacts in the mixture. You know, so that one has to do with how things change in relation to another. So, but that's not that's another thing. But in the case of probability, it's I would say why probability is so rich is that it is how we, most of the things we do, it has to do with decision making.
That is true.
And most of the things we do, there's nothing like, only a few things are 100% true or correct. You know, so we are going about life and we're trying to say, what is my probability? What is the probability that this is going to work? What is the probability that this is going to work? I cannot really say for sure that it is going to work, but I can at least have a measure of probability, you know, and because it is probability, it can fail. That's why it is probability. It has a probability, a low probability of failure. Even if if your probability is good, the fact that it is not 100% still shows that there's 0.001 or so that it can fail. So when you experience that that failure, and when one experiences that failure, it doesn't mean you have not. It doesn't have to imply that you have done a bad probability. Understand the study, but it just shows that yes, your study has a 0 point. You know, it is rare, but it has happened. You know, so this way of thinking, it's very important.
It's the way I understand it. It's your mind has to be very big to process all of these information that changes, because something small as 0.001 plays a huge role, and everything plays a huge role, and you have to acknowledge that. And it's a different way of thinking.
So it's just in a world of uncertainty. How do you? The world is filled with uncertainty. How do you go through it? You know, and nothing helps you do it better than probability. You know, and probability. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this sentence is so powerful and true. I mean, we're living in a world of probabilities. Even what we're seeing right now, like it's how can I say it? We're not even seeing the world for what the world truly is. Like, we're seeing 0.035% of the electric magnetic field.
Yeah.
But still, we're saying it's reality. You know, this is real because it's physical. This is real. This is real. You know, this board is real. This mic is real. The smartphone is real. The cap is real. But thinking that all that is just a small percentage, and the whole spectrum of the electrical magnetic field, that really makes you think.
So, yeah, I mean, if you, it's always good to go with it in your decision making process, and because we are all gamblers, so you have to know when to bet and when not to bet, and even when you bet, can you anticipate the downside, which goes to power again. If you anticipate the downside, what have you done to mitigate to mitigate the downside? You know, now let's say the probability of something failing is low, but you are aware that it's low. Is there something you can do to ensure that it is that when it happens, that you don't crash? You know, that you don't crash, and that you don't crash. So it has to do with it's just about decision making, you know. And there'll be a time you might not have any way of mitigating against the risks, and you might just say, fuck it, I'm going for it, hauling, you know, whatever happens, you know. But it's always safe to mitigate, but there are times you might just say, fuck it, I'm going hauling, you know. So and you could see with the case of Emile Mox, you know, when this guy was shot, they then went full hauling. You know, he was away from the politics, but immediately the guy was shot maybe he had a bent, but he didn't go hauling, you know. But immediately the guy was shot, he knew that he could place his bet that was a turning point in the politics, and he went hauling, So sometimes you can go all in and it's going to work. Yeah, you might have a way of mitigating, and you might not have. So, but we are all gamblers, and you should, and doing good probability, having a probabilistic thinking. That's the word, and also a statistical thinking. It's a way to go through life. Apart from even doing it as a subject, like you just
writing a thesis,
doing the mathematics.
Yeah.
There are books like I can even recommend.
Yeah, please.
The heart. It's ART, the heart of probabilistic thinking.
Okay.
And the heart of statistical thinking. So you might not go into all the details of the numbers, and you are just looking at how it is as a principle and philosophy. So it's going to be enjoyable. I haven't read them, but I intend to read them. Because it makes it more intuitive than you just doing the numbers. Yes, you can have an idea when you are doing the numbers, but when you are doing it, reading it intuitively, it becomes how you begin to see the world. And so it's always good. This is good.
For sure.
So you just go to Amazon, just put the ART of probabilistic thinking and the ART of statistical thinking.
By which author?
I don't know the author, but
okay.
once you put it there, it's gonna come out.
Yeah, we'll put that in the description for our viewers who are interested in expanding their mind into that kind of thinking. For sure.
It's important. Then, metaphysics, which is that we can just hint on it by you just when you talk about metaphysics. When we talk about metaphysics, it reminds you that it is a research field.